Can a shouted threat made just days before truly lock in a murder conviction? Especially when the actual killing looks more like a heated argument that just spirals fatally out of control.
It's a tough question, right?
Yeah. And what happens when the Philippines' highest court revisits a case that seemed pretty straightforward, peeling back these layers of intent, circumstance, and finding a different truth?
Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today.
Today, we are diving deep into a Supreme Court case that really got people talking. It forces us, to look hard at that blurry line between impulsive violence and premeditated murder.
We're talking about People of the Philippines versus Dante Galam and Lito Galam. The GR number is 224222, and the decision came down on October 9th, 2019. It was quite the case.
A viral case, I remember. Started as murder, ended differently.
Exactly. So our mission today is to really understand it, all the facts as presented, how it moved through the lower courts, the specific legal point the Supreme Court focused on, and of course their final ruling and the key principles behind it.
Okay, let's start at the beginning then. The facts. What happened on that night in Nueva Ecija?
All right, so the crime itself took place back on January 15th, 2000. This is in Muñoz, Nueva Ecija. The victim was Eusebio Antolin.
And the accused?
Two brothers, Dante Galam and Lito Galam. Now, the prosecution's story, it really hinged on the testimonies of the victim's children, Mario and Mary Jane Antolin.
Eyewitnesses, what did they say they thought?
They testified that around 7 p.m. they heard their father arguing, loudly, outside their house.
Okay.
So they looked out, and they saw their father, Eusebio, in a confrontation with both Dante and Lito.
Oh.
According to them, things got heated fast. Lito allegedly shouted, "Papatayin ka namin,"
Which means?
"We will kill you," a very direct threat. At the same time, they said Dante cursed at their father, "Putang ina mo."
Right, strong words.
Very. Then Mary Jane and Mario testified that Lito pointed a gun at Eusebio, and their father, apparently defiant, challenged him, saying, "CJ iputok mo, go ahead, fire it."
Wow.
And he did. Tragically, yes. Lito shot Eusebio in the chest. The brothers then apparently fled the scene. Mario and Mary Jane rushed out and found their father dead.
Just devastating for them. But the prosecution didn't stop there, right? There were claims of earlier threats. This wasn't totally out of the blue.
And that's what the prosecution argued, yeah. These prior incidents became really important later on. Another son, Bartolome Antolin, he testified about something that happened just 2 days before the shooting.
Okay, what was that?
He claimed the Galam brothers had invited his father for drinks. During that time, Bartolome said Dante threatened Eusebio, something in Ilocano, "Larangim no madi ka agsardeng patayin ka," which translates roughly to "make it good or else we will kill you."
So another direct threat, just days before.
Exactly. And there was more. The victim's wife, Marissa Antolin, she testified about an argument from even earlier, like 2 years prior.
2 years.
Yeah, apparently over a land dispute. And she claimed Dante had threatened her husband back then too, saying, "Pag di ka tumigil, may mangyayari sa'yo." If you don't stop, something will happen to you.
A pattern of threats, potentially. Was there any other corroboration for the incident itself?
Yes, there was Bobby Perez, the victim's nephew. He testified that on the day of the shooting, he actually saw the Galam brothers walking towards Eusebio's house. And he specifically mentioned seeing Lito holding a gun.
He saw the gun before the shooting?
That's what he claimed. Then he heard cursing, followed by a gunshot. He went over and found his uncle, Eusebio, already dead.
So multiple witnesses pointing to the brothers, the gun, the threats. What did the medical evidence show?
Pretty clear cut on the cause of death. The medical legal report done the next day by Dr. Carmelita Carlos confirmed a single gunshot wound, penetrating in the right chest. The cause of death was listed as hemorrhagic shock due to the gunshot wound.
Okay. Strong case from the prosecution's side. What about the defense? What did the Galam brothers say happened or didn't happen?
Well, interestingly, only one of the brothers, Dante Galam, actually testified and offered a defense. Lito Galam remained silent.
Okay, so what was Dante's story?
He presented an alibi. He claimed that on January 15th, around 4 p.m., he was working in his sister's onion field. His sister was Amelia Galam Batangan. He said this field was maybe a 10-minute walk from Eusebio's house.
10 minutes, that's not very far.
Right. He then said his sister invited him for dinner around 7 p.m., the time the crime occurred. After dinner, he claimed his brother-in-law, Teodoro Batangan, gave him a ride home.
And what time did he say he got home?
He stated he was home by 8:45 p.m. and asleep by 9 p.m. Said he only found out he was a suspect the next morning when a neighbor told him.
Did anyone back up his story?
Yes. His sister Amelia and his brother-in-law Teodoro both testified and corroborated his alibi.
So family members supporting his alibi. How did the first court, the trial court, see all this?
The regional trial court, the RTC in Balac, Sto Domingo, and Nueva Ecija, they didn't buy the alibi. In their decision on June 18, 2013, they found both Dante and Lito Galam guilty of murder.
Murder. So they believed the prosecution's version.
Absolutely. They gave full credit to the positive identification made by Mario and Mary Jane. They found their testimonies credible. The RTC also ruled that there was treachery involved. They saw it as a sudden attack.
Even with the argument beforehand.
Apparently, yes. And they also found evident premeditation, that threat from 2 days prior. The RTC saw that as proof the brothers had planned the killing beforehand.
And the alibi.
Dismissed. They also ruled that the brothers acted together, in conspiracy. The sentence was reclusion perpetua.
Life imprisonment, essentially, plus damages.
Yes, significant damages, civil indemnity, temperate, moral, and exemplary damages, plus interest.
Okay. So the RTC was convinced it was premeditated murder. What happened when it went to the Court of Appeals? Did they see it differently?
Nope. The Court of Appeals, the CA, in their decision from June 10, 2015, they affirmed the RTC's conviction. Murder.
Really? They agreed on everything?
Pretty much. They upheld the findings on positive identification, they agreed there was treachery, they agreed there was evident premeditation, and they agreed on the conspiracy. They just tweaked the amount of civil indemnity slightly, increasing it, but fundamentally they backed the RTC's decision. Murder.
So 2 courts down, both saying murder. This seems quite settled. Why did it even go to the Supreme Court? What was the specific issue they agreed to look at?
That's the crucial part. The core question before the Supreme Court was basically, did the Court of Appeals get it right? Specifically, they zoomed in on those qualifying circumstances. Had the prosecution really proven, beyond a reasonable doubt, that treachery and evident premeditation were present? Because those are what elevate homicide to murder.
Okay. So it wasn't about who did it that seemed settled, but about the nature of the crime itself, murder or something less.
Exactly. Was it legally murder under the revised penal code?
And what did the highest court decide? This is where things shifted, right?
Significantly shifted. The Supreme Court, in that October 9th, 2019 decision, GR number 224222, well, they denied the brothers' appeal in the sense that they were still found guilty. But, and this is the big modification, they found them guilty of homicide, not murder.
Homicide. Wow. So what did that mean for their sentence?
A major difference. Instead of reclusion perpetua, they were given an indeterminate sentence. It ranged from 8 years of prison mayor as the minimum, up to 14 years, 8 months, and 1 day of reclusion temporal as the maximum.
A defined range, much less than life. And the damages?
Also adjusted. Civil indemnity was reduced, tempered damages were actually increased, but crucially, the exemplary damages were deleted altogether. They kept the interest requirement, though.
Okay, huge change. What was the Supreme Court's reasoning? Why did they disagree with 2 lower courts about treachery and premeditation? Let's start with treachery.
Right. The Supreme Court looked closely at the moments right before the shooting. They pointed to the heated argument, the explicit threat, papatayin ka namin, shouted right then and there.
The "we will kill you" threat.
Yes. And crucially, the victim Eusebio's response, Sige, ipudok mo. Go ahead, fire it. The court said this whole exchange served as a clear warning to Eusebio. He knew he was in danger.
So it wasn't a surprise attack, not treacherous.
That was the court's finding. They said the attack wasn't sudden or unexpected in a way that deprived Eusebio of any chance to defend himself, even if that chance was small. There was no evidence they deliberately chose a method, like attacking from behind, specifically to ensure he couldn't fight back. It was a frontal confrontation born from an argument. So no treachery.
Okay, that makes sense legally, distinguishing a fight from an ambush. What about evident premeditation? The lower courts seemed convinced by the earlier threats.
The Supreme Court acknowledged those earlier threats, yes. The one from 2 days before, even the one from 2 years before. But they set a high bar for proving evident premeditation.
What was missing?
They said that just having made a threat isn't enough. The prosecution needed to show some overt act during that time, those 2 days between the threat and the killing that demonstrated the brothers were actually planning, preparing, and clinging to that decision to kill.
Like buying the guns specifically for it or staking out the house, something concrete.
Exactly. Some proof of reflection and persistence in the plan. The court found no such evidence was presented. The threat alone, without proof of intervening acts showing planning, wasn't enough to establish evident premeditation beyond a reasonable doubt.
So without treachery and without evident premeditation.
The killing couldn't qualify as murder. It was intentional killing, yes, but legally classified as homicide. They upheld the conspiracy finding and the identification, but downgraded the crime itself based on the lack of those specific qualifying circumstances.
This case really puts a spotlight on how carefully our courts, especially the Supreme Court, have to dissect the specific elements of a crime, doesn't it? I mean, how significant is that distinction, really, between something done in the heat of a moment versus a carefully planned act? What are the real-world impacts of getting that legal nuance right or wrong?
Oh, it's hugely significant. This case is a perfect example. It shows the incredible level of detail the Supreme Court applies.
Yeah.
They don't just look at the outcome someone died, but precisely how it happened according to the strict definitions in the law.
And the consequences are massive.
Absolutely. For the accused, Dante and Lito Galam, it meant the difference between potentially spending the rest of their lives in prison and having a determinate sentence, offering a possibility of release. That's life-altering.
And for the victim's family.
That's complex too, of course. While a homicide conviction still holds the perpetrators accountable for the death, it might feel different from a murder conviction. It impacts their sense of justice, perhaps, the finality of it. It highlights that justice, in the legal sense, means applying the law correctly to the proven facts, even when the emotional reality is devastating regardless.
It really underscores that principle of proof beyond a reasonable doubt for every single element of the offense charged, not just who did it, but all the technical legal requirements too.
Precisely. Especially when the stakes are as high as they are in murder cases.
Definitely a case worth understanding. For everyone listening, maybe we should quickly break down some of those key legal terms, the doctrines that were so central to this decision.
Good idea. Let's clarify them. First, positive identification. This is pretty straightforward. It's when eyewitnesses clearly and believably recognize the accused. Here, Mario and Mary Jane's testimony was key.
Right. Then there was alibi. That's the defense claim of being elsewhere during the crime, like Dante tried. But as we saw, it needs to be strong, really proving it was impossible to be at the crime scene. His wasn't strong enough.
Correct. Next, conspiracy. This is crucial when multiple people are involved. It means there was an agreement, spoken or implied, between two or more people to commit the crime. Once conspiracy is proven, the act of one becomes the act of all. The SC agree there was conspiracy here.
Okay. And the two big ones the SC focused on, treachery.
Yes, alevosha. Legally, it means using methods in the attack that ensure the victim can't defend themselves and doing so deliberately. Think attacking from behind or when someone's asleep. The key is the lack of opportunity for defense and the conscious choice of that method. The prior argument here negated that.
Got it. And evident premeditation.
This requires proving three things. 1, the time when the accused decided to commit the crime. 2, an overt act showing they stuck to that plan. And 3, enough time passed between the decision and the act for them to reflect. Just making a threat earlier wasn't enough here without proof of steps taken afterwards.
Which leads to the difference between homicide and murder.
Exactly. Homicide is the unlawful killing of a person. Murder is homicide plus one or more of those qualifying circumstances, like treachery or evident premeditation. If those aren't proven, it remains homicide.
And finally, the sentencing involved the indeterminate sentence law.
Right. Instead of a single fixed term, the court sets a minimum and a maximum period. The actual time served depends on factors like good behavior, potentially allowing for earlier release after the minimum term. That's what the Galam brothers received for the homicide conviction.
What does this Galam case reveal about how meticulously our courts dissect the elements of a crime? How significant really is the distinction between a spur-of-the-moment killing during a fight and a carefully plotted execution? And what are those real-world consequences? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments section below.
Yeah, let us know what you think. And if you found this deep dive valuable, please hit that favorite button. It really helps us out.
For more analyses like this, unpacking landmark legal cases, and getting into the details behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe to The Deep Dive.
Join our community. We try to unpack the stories shaping our laws and society. Hit subscribe so you don't miss our next exploration.